Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the season finale of season 2 of Loki, the MCU show that is easily my favorite of all the MCU shows, and I think this finale proves that this is my personal favorite of everything in the entirety of the MCU because it caters to everything that I love personally as a fan of art, as a fan of time travel, as a fan of conceptual time travel, weird paradoxical storylines that is all explored in this series, and I think that this entire season does it extremely well, and the finale just capped it off perfectly. And of course, I will be talking about spoilers for Loki Season 2, so if you have not seen all 6 episodes of this new season, I will be talking about all the little details inside of it and why I did love it as much as I did, and I cannot wait to talk about the Loki Season 2 along with the future of the MCU that I think that this show kind of hints at the promise of what it can be. So let's talk about the finale itself first before I get into my general thoughts on the season, because this finale was really entertaining. It was like a Groundhog Day type of storyline with Loki being able to master his ability to slip through time so he can go back to that moment before the loom exploded to try to get Victor Timely to run across that bridge before turning into a bunch of spaghetti, which that cliffhanger, by the way, I haven't talked about, the episodes as they came out week by week, but that was one of the funniest and most shocking moments in the entirety of the MCU, and to see it all kind of replayed in fast forward and Loki desperately trying to get this moment to be perfectly right was extremely entertaining. And again, this show and this episode in particular deals with time travel and the idea of reliving this moment and trying to be perfect in its execution of trying to get this event to go exactly the way that Loki wants it to go, in a way that's like Edge of Tomorrow mastered it. Groundhog Day obviously was the first one to truly master that idea and concept, and me being a fan of time travel and all of those types of movies, literally every single movie that has ever existed that has anything to do with a character reliving the same day over and over again, trying to get it right, like Palm Springs or Edge of Tomorrow, or hell, even Before I Fall. I do enjoy all these movies because I love this concept, and so this show bringing one of my favorite time travel concepts of all time, of course I'm gonna love how they handled it in this. But what I love about a sci-fi concept like this, when you're reliving the same day, it forces the main character to go through all these desperate attempts to try to fix this one little thing, and they can live through centuries of life learning all the intricacies in what they're trying to do, but in the end, even after all this knowledge and all this power, he will still fail because it was set up to always fail, and I have to kind of reconcile with that idea that this loom is meant to explode in this moment, is a fixed moment in time, and no matter what they do, no matter how fast Victor Timely runs across that bridge and runs all the way back after accomplishing what he needed to do, this loom was built to destroy every other timeline besides the sacred timeline. And I just love that idea that Loki has to look back at his life and look back at all the moments, not only in this season, but going back to the beginning of season 1, to going back to that moment in the finale of season 1, talking to He Who Remains, and we get to relive some of those moments as well, and it creates an Ouroboros in and of itself, with this show looping back all the way to that first season and the whole show being a circle of sorts, because this episode is called Glorious Purpose, as the first episode of the entire series was called Glorious Purpose, and it deals with these sci-fi concepts on a conceptual level so incredibly well. The season has honestly reminded me of the show Dark, which, if you haven't seen the show Dark on Netflix, I think it is easily the best show in terms of time travel that I've ever seen. Honestly, I think it's the best example of time travel because it's not afraid to deal with paradoxes. When you have all these different things with time travel, like Back to the Future or any other, classic time travel movie, you're always going to point out the plot holes and how time wouldn't work that way. But if you embrace the paradoxes and you explore those paradoxes on a conceptual level and deal with how it is a constant loop, if you gave this book of knowledge of the TVA to Victor Timely when he was young to only grow up, to create this entire cycle to only lead it to a character giving that book back to him at the very beginning, it creates a circle of time that is never ending, this cycle that needs to be broken. And that is exactly what the whole purpose of the show was, even at the beginning of season 1. And I think when the show started with season 2, everybody's kind of pieced together what is the purpose of this season, what is the storyline of this show, because I don't think it was as clear or as simple as the first season was. The first season was quite simple in the idea that you have Loki dealing with this new world building with, finding out what the TVA is, learning that there's a variant of himself that is extremely dangerous, and you want to try to stop this character from doing these things. All the while you're trying to unravel the mystery of what the TVA is and who created it. It's a pretty streamlined thing that goes down to the end of it, where you meet He Who Remains and kind of set up the fact that Kang is going to be the next big bad in the MCU, and that was perfectly done. It was weaved together extremely well. But when you start this season, you start in utter chaos. You start with the TVA absolutely collapsing. You start with all these timelines and this loom bursting at the seams, and you think that the loom is just going to be a smaller thing. At least I thought it was going to be a smaller thing in the first couple episodes, but it became the point of the entire season. That was the Sylvie of the season. That is the thing that they wanted to understand and try to fix. But when you get to the end of it, you get back to that room with He Who Remains and realize that yes, all that stuff was important in its own right, and it was the idea of what Loki wanted to save. But the real choice that Loki has had to make, even from the beginning of the very first season when he first encountered He Who Remains, is, do you want time to continue in the way that it has been, being one sacred timeline and protecting that one thing, or have everything go off into chaos and start a multiversal war? Let all these streams of the multiverse kind of go out in chaos, and are you going to destroy the thing? Are you going to try to break that cycle in the hopes that in the end of all this chaos it forms one single timeline that is better than the one that came before? Or it can loop all the way back around and end the exact same way with He Who Remains at top, or a different variant of Kang at top. And I think that is what it has set up to what the multiverse saga is conceptually. That is what this entire series has kind of set up in my mind, is that it is the choice. This takes place, kind of first in the entirety of the, the multiversal saga. Nothing that has happened thus far in the MCU post Endgame could have happened without the events of this series. And it kind of tees up the idea that everything that happens now on the sacred timeline or on any of these other strands of the MCU is because of this event. And it deals with the idea that it can all come together and it can create one single timeline that can be better than what came before, but it's going to have to go through all this chaos to get there. And I think we need to see more Kang in the, the continuation of this multiverse saga. I need to see all these things happen, because this show is kind of the pitch for what the multiverse saga can be. It is the idea, it is the concept of all these multiverses weaving together and clashing and destroying itself until it kind of settles on one idea. And so in a way, I think that Loki, especially this finale, is a promise to what, the multiverse saga can be. It just is a matter of whether or not those storylines can be what is promised in this show, which honestly, with the writers of this show, it gives me hope that they can pull it off, but it's going to be such a tall feat. It is such an ambitious idea to do a story that is spanning through multiple different universes rather than one single universe revolving around a couple of MacGuffins with the Infinity Stones. It is so much more ambitious than we have ever seen before in all of film, and if anybody can do it, I genuinely think that Marvel has a chance of doing it. I think what they have done thus far in Phase 4 and Phase 5 has been messy. I don't think that there's any sugarcoating it. I think there's a lot of projects that's been really good. I think there's a lot of projects that haven't been very good. And what I think the Infinity Saga did extremely well with those first 3 phases of the MCU was to tell character stories at the basis and kind of have a contained story that's kind of weave these characters together, but to have hints at where these Infinity Stones are at any given time and kind of point the direction that this is all leading to a certain purpose. And I think that is what the MCU has been lacking. I feel like they've had a couple of different threads, which I might make a video describing the state of the MCU and how I think that there hasn't been one singular purpose. There's been the multiverse saga. There's also been, setting up the Young Avengers. There's been setting up the Thunderbolts. There's been setting up, the gods end of the MCU with something like Moon Knight and Thor Love and Thunder. And I think that all these things feel so incredibly separate and leading to different, team up events in the future. But when you call this entire thing the multiverse saga, it feels very scattered and very hard to piece together. But I think even with the Marvels releasing this weekend, honestly, I think that film does what the promise of what the multiverse saga can be extremely well. It tells a contained story in what it is and has little seeds planted in there, especially at the end, that can tease what the idea of this multiverse saga can mean in the future. And with that being said, I will have a full review out for the Marvels here on the channel in full spoiler fashion. So if you want to see my full thoughts on that film and how I think it actually fits pretty nicely in the multiverse saga, definitely go check out that video here on the channel. But let's get into this season as a whole and the character arcs and everything that is in this, because I think on a conceptual level with this finale, I think it tees up the future for the MCU extremely well. But I think the reason why I loved this season so much and why I love Loki Loki so much, like I said at the top of the review, I think it's my favorite thing in all of the MCU, is because of the characters and because of Loki's journey throughout the entirety of the MCU, and how I think that he has the most compelling story of everybody that we've seen so far. I know that the Asgardians in the MCU are technically gods, but they've always felt like, to me, just to be like aliens living in outer space that humans saw as gods. I never really saw them as gods themselves. And, I know Thor Love and Thunder tried to kind of explore them in that sort of way, and it was a little hit or miss depending on who you are watching that film. And I think Eternals also explored the gods in the MCU, and Moon Knight also explored some of the godlike aspects of the MCU. But I think this is truly the first time where a single character felt like a true god, because Loki in this show has grown so much from his introduction in the early MCU days with Thor, leading up all the way up to Avengers Endgame, but to see his arc from the first season of Loki to now this final episode of Loki, which this episode also, I kind of failed to mention, feels like a series finale for Loki. And they said that they have no plans to make a season 3, which breaks my heart to not know that they're going to do a season 3 of Loki. But honestly, I think it wraps up all these storylines, especially with Loki, in a satisfying manner, because he makes his transition from the god of mischief to the god of stories. He has the ability to travel through time in this show through the time slipping. He has the ability to grab all these timelines and to build a path out to kind of build this tree of timelines in the finale of this episode. And he truly felt like a god, grabbing all of time and kind of forming it to give everybody a chance to live their lives and to possibly create something better by the end of it. He is literally the one holding all of time, all of the multiverse together with his bare hands, and he's made that choice to kind of step outside of time itself and to be the one sitting on that throne, and to let the people of the multiverse try to do their things with their free will, with the hope that they create something better by the end of it. And that is the true definition of a god, somebody that is omnipotent, somebody that is above everybody else, that is kind of letting everybody else do what they need to do. He's not interfering with all these things. He's literally holding it all together to give them a chance to live their free will. And I think that that is such a great way to lead this character. And honestly, I'm sure we'll see Loki in Secret Wars or King Dynasty or something like that. But honestly, if this is the last time we ever see Loki, I would kind of be satisfied. And I think in general, this show did a great job handling all these side characters. I love Mobius and Owen Wilson so much in this series. And again, it feeling like a series finale introduced the idea of the first episode in this season saying, oh, who were you on the sacred timeline? What was your life? Were you a father of these two boys? Oh, he was a father, and he sold jet skis, and that is why he had the personality that he had. He tells a great story in this episode about a hunter who went back to kill this variant that was going to cause the deaths of 5,000 people, and he realizes that it's a young boy and he does not have the strength to prune this kid, and causes a few hunters to die, causes all this pain and destruction. Renslayer is the one who steps in to prune this little kid, and he didn't have the ability to do that. He didn't have the will to prune the life of this person, even though them in the TVA didn't see pruning as killing people. And so he's always had that heart with him. He always had that memory of having his children. He always kept that with him. You can erase his memories of the sacred timeline, but you can never truly lose the soul of the person that he started off as. And I thought that was a beautiful story to tell with all the variants here that we see in the MCU or in the TVA, all the characters that we had followed from the very beginning. And I just think that is a great way to weave all these storylines, and to have Mobius be able to go back to the sacred timeline and live a life outside of the TVA, it's essentially retiring from the TVA. I think that's also a great ending for this character without Loki, with Sylvie by his side to know that they have the free will to live their lives now. And honestly, I think that ending for both these characters was pretty satisfying. I love the state of the TVA by the end of this episode. The TVA has kind of been in chaos throughout the entirety of the season. You've been wondering if it was just going to be destroyed by the end of it, or if it was going to kind of go back to how it was by the beginning of this show, or what is going to happen with it. And now they have a new way to not only look over a single timeline, but to look over the tree of timelines that has been created by Loki in this finale. And with Hunter B-15 kind of leading the charge, having all these people in the war room discussing and being more open in discussing how they're going to handle these things. Miss Minutes has been rebooted, and it has the hope of not becoming a psychopath again in the future, but I'm kind of hoping she becomes a psychopath again in the future, because I loved all the crazy things that Miss Minutes did did throughout this season. So many different ideas. Ouroboros and his arc in this season of being, the weird kooky guy that has been kind of hiding in the basement but finding a greater purpose in himself, of being praised by all these other people and having a bigger role in the TVA from what he had before, and how important he truly was in the grand scheme of things. I loved seeing Huy Quan in this show. I thought he was a great presence and honestly the perfect casting for a character like this. I do think that the whole Brad storyline and the other hunter that, he was kind of teaming up with, that were trying to destroy all these timelines, I do wish that there was a little bit more time given for those characters, but honestly, I had fun with those episodes and seeing those characters do their thing, and the way that they died was absolutely brutal and showed that this show was not, it was not holding back at all. It was awesome to see Benson and Moorhead truly go nuts with this show and truly be unapologetic with how they handled the horror of this show, the sci-fi of this show, the timey-wimey, really confusing conceptual stuff, because that's what they've been doing with all their indie films. If you haven't seen Benson and Moorhead's films, definitely go check them out. I think Something in the Dirt is probably their best film. I love Synchronic as well. I think that all of their work has been brilliant. I think that their style and their camera movements and their direction warranted even better with this show than it did with Moon Knight. I will say that if I had one glaring flaw with this second season, is I'd say that Sylvie is the one that kind of took the most backseat in this show, because she was the forefront. She was the one that everybody was looking for in that first season. She was very much the point, and it led to her decision to kill He Who Remains in that first season. And, completing that arc, accomplishing the thing that she's been striving for this entire time, it gives the writers, it kind of puts them in a tough spot to decide what they want to do with her character going forward. And it felt like she didn't have too much to do here, but I understand that the writers felt like they were put in a corner with this decision, because her arc was complete in that first season, so she doesn't have too much to do here. But I do love her role, especially in this finale, with having that conversation with Loki at the end of time and trying to deal with what his decision is going to be. And I'm excited to see what her role is going to be in the future of the multiverse saga, and I hope that she gets some interesting stories going forward. But really, Loki season 2 had everything that I love about time travel, about sci-fi, about the MCU, about these characters, about Loki and his journey and his character arc that he's been going throughout the entirety of this series, and the fact that it kind of tees up the conceptual idea of what the multiverse saga can be in the future. I think that it has so much promising prospects to look at what this series can turn into in the future of the MCU. It's just so ambitious that I'm hoping the rest of the MCU can live up to the heights that this show has kind of set the precedent for, because I do think that this is my favorite thing in the entirety of the MCU. I think I had it ranked at my number 5 or 6 before the second season, but with this finale, it really does push over the top, because if you know me and know the types of films that I like, the fact that Arrival is my favorite film of all time, the fact that Dark and Lost are some of my favorite shows of all time, with the time travel elements being some of my favorite things, with hell, even, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was my favorite Harry Potter movie because of time travel. I love time travel. My dream is to make a time travel film, and I think the greatest compliment that I can give any show or movie or anything like that is the fact that it inspired me as an artist to want to write, to continue to strive for that sci-fi, time travel idea that I have in my head, not knowing how to get it out all on paper. It inspired me to want to be a better writer and a better artist, to make something that comes even close to the conceptual ideas that this show handled in this season, and that's the best compliment that I can ever give this. So those are my thoughts, my very long-winded and complicated and very loving thoughts of Loki season 2. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this season as well. But that is going to be it from me for Loki season 2. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you guys leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. Like I said, I have the Marvels coming up pretty soon here, along with all the other movies releasing for the rest of this year. And with the actor strike finally over, we can hope to see a bunch of other films finally getting release dates and getting to see all these things come to fruition that we've been excited for all this time. Like Dune. Please, I want to see Dune so bad. I cannot wait to watch that movie. So definitely stay subscribed to the channel to see more reviews just like that one. And I hope to see you all in my next one.